This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show. This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show.
YouTube, what is up? I'm your homeboy Josh, back at you, and today we're taking a look at the Hellixer RDTA from Footoon. Footoon's Inferno is what it says right underneath Hellixer. Contents list on the side, some authenticity holograms on the back. This awesome Hellixer logo. They went with stark white for the foam, so the device kind of really pops in there, and it's like they went to the trouble of making sure that it's positioned in the box just so you can get that logo to greet you when you open it up for the first time. And it's that same logo for the Hellixer from the outside of the box. Behind the foam you have a little separator, and underneath it you've got your baggie of extras and whatnot. You get some extra O-rings, you get a vape band, and these oddly shaped sort of O-rings, which will make a lot more sense shortly. And you also get some tools as well, and some pretty sweet tools. You actually get your own little coil jig, which is pretty cool. And it fits into the coil jig from Coil Master too, which is handy. And there's the Hellixer RDTA. On the side of the box, you've got some specs. It's 22 millimeters on the upper diameter, 23 millimeters on the lower diameter. So it's a little bit wider than a 22 millimeter device for the most part. It is 42 millimeters in the height in a 3 milliliter version, and there's a 5 millimeter version floating out there, which is 52 millimeters. It has a bottom spin lock system, which is kind of weird the way that this thing works. It's got these 3 little indentations on the side of the tank, and it's got this 1 indentation on the base of the tank that houses the deck. But to make some quick sense of it, this one on the side is where you can take the top off and back on. This one in the middle is where it is open, there's airflow, and juice is being driven down to the coil. And over here on the side, it's all kind of locked up and closed off again. But it doesn't come apart that way. And you gotta be careful how you open this thing, because juice is just going to fall right out of it when you open it. So you kind of have to turn it upside down, like that, and it's still gonna leak because there's juice inside the chamber. Not a fan. It's kind of hazardous to open this thing at any point, whether you have it upside down or right side up. There's never a good time to open it once it's built. Whenever you go to access it, open it up, I just lost half my tank there. Or if not all my tank. The majority of my tank I just lost. Yeah. And then filling it, the top cap is all Delrin, the drip tip is Delrin. It is removable, but to remove this drip tip, I'm digging my nails in there, and I'm like wrenching on it, and it's not going anywhere. You've got to take a pair of pliers, basically. Yeah, it's not too bad. It didn't mar it up too much. You really got to take some pliers to this thing if you want to get it out. But you can fit your own standard 510 drip tips in there if you want to. Filling it, you just kind of pull off that whole piece. Secured with this little thing that protrudes there. It's not secured at the sides. I don't really see that too often where it's not secured at the sides, it's secured in the middle. I don't know, there's something about it just feels cheap. I don't get why this is all Delrin. I kind of wish that they had made this piece metal and the drip tip can be Delrin, but this should be metal, if you ask me. It just feels cheap this way. In fact, what I've noticed is that a lot of times the top cap likes to get caught up on this piece right underneath it, and they like to screw off together, which opens up the glass piece, and you can take that out. But when that happens, a lot of times juice is getting out from underneath it, and it's messy. It's a messy device, is what I've found. Very, very messy overall. Filling it's easy enough. You want to make sure that you rotate it closed when you're filling it, and just get everything back together. Just like so. And then you got to remember to open it back up. You got to turn it to the middle one. The middle key is where it's open, you have airflow, the juice flow is open, and you can vape. In the process of doing it, this thing has gotten just super, super messy. Just in turning it closed and opening it back up and filling it, it's kind of turned into a little bit of a disaster. And when it's vaping, it's pretty good. It's good flavor, it's good vapor production, good clouds. It's a good vape overall, the way it behaves. It's warm, wet, tasty vape. Big airflow, but you can adjust it and close it off a bit. But you have to remember, while you're doing that, You're also closing it down on the juice flow, and you're closing down the airflow simultaneously. I don't get any dry hits from it when it's built and wicked correctly, which we'll get into. In between this base piece and this top cap, you've got this craziness going on. There's a lot going on with this tank. They've got some big juice windows on the sides, a lot of heat reduction fins over here, and built into the heat dissipation fins, which are constantly collecting juice within them, you've got your airflow holes, which are these big round 3 or 4 millimeter airflow holes. You can close them off, open them up within this sort of insulated chamber that's inside of it. That's what's controlling your juice flow down to the coils and controlling your airflow over here. It's this thin piece of insulator. My advice to you, go ahead and take this out. Take your tweezers and just take it out before you get started building it. The idea is that it's supposed to stay in this thing, I think, but it doesn't. And it's kind of to your benefit that it doesn't anyway. So just go ahead and remove it, because it's going to make it easier when situating your wicks and whatnot to work with this outside of the device. Ugh. There we go. This piece kind of becomes loose once e-juice gets all over it anyway, so it makes sense to go ahead and just take it out. Because it makes wicking and everything a lot easier if this thing is out, if you ask me. This is your deck on the Hellixer RDTA. It's an unusual deck. These guys up here at the top, this is where your wicking goes. You build this like you would any other velocity style deck. The post holes are rather tiny. They're something like 2 millimeter post holes, and today's day and age it's kind of a tiny post hole if you ask me. The deck, I would say, is cleaner than average until you get to the post holes. The post holes, you can see lots of places where they're just kind of rough cut. They're not so clean, and the posts could use a lot of refinement as well. The machining is honestly downright rough in a lot of places here, especially on the posts and around the terminals. The terminals just look rough hewn. They look like they were bored out with a bullet, honestly. It looks like someone shot a teeny tiny bullet through that post and called it a hole. They are rough hewn. Teeny tiny Allen key heads up by the top and the side. But you build it like any standard velocity style deck, you just wick it a bit differently. I actually built this device some time ago, and I've been using it in this configuration with these 10 wraps of 24 gauge dual coil for, I want to say, about a month or so now. Yeah, something like that. Wicking it is where it's tricky. Other than that, it is very much like any other velocity style deck to build. It's easy to build. It's wicking it where the challenge comes in. The idea behind this deck design is that gravity is going to drive juice down to the coils and down to the wicks. So once you have your cotton fed through, like you would any other RDTA, you bring these wicks on up through here. I just kind of drive the cotton so it's like right underneath the wicking hole, and then I just take my tweezers and get in there with it and drag it on through. And the same thing on the other side. Just kind of drive the cotton so it's right underneath the wicking hole and reach through it and drag it on through. I actually filmed this whole process some weeks ago and lost the footage, so I had to do this again for you guys. There's no way to explain it without showing you, I don't think, what this thing is about. So once the cotton is through the wicking holes and it's kind of draped all over the place like these demented bunny ears, I'll go back in and I will sort of push the cotton down again into these sort of wells. Like there are these little wells that are kind of created over here. And I kind of like my cotton sitting on them so that the juice just kind of flows down through the cotton and then collects over here and feeds to the coil that way. Otherwise, it can result in getting some dry hits because it's not going to feed down this wick to the coil fast enough, just like that. Kind of compact it right there in that little well. And I kind of push them down a little bit further than I think that they should go, because we're going to pull them up again one more time. I'll come in and trim these wicks a bit. And you'll see that this piece kind of lines up with the round curves of the top of the wicking area. See, it's got like these sorts of curvy areas to it at the bottom, and it kind of fits over it like a key. Just like that. And when it's all fit into place, the air holes are situated right in front of the coil. Which is another reason that this device really isn't suited to the biggest of builds either. Where they are right now, they're kind of pushed back a bit into the deck, if you notice. Well, if they were out any further, they'd be making contact with that insulator, and we don't want that. So anyway, it's easier to build this thing with this on there, because the last step in getting this all wicked up is to go ahead and pull these on through this piece. That's why I pushed the wicks down just a little bit further than I think they should, because I need to pull them through here. Just a little bit. Oh, that's too much. And then, once they're all through there, I shave them down. Just like so. And I'll go ahead and juice them a little bit as well. Just the tips. And I'll kind of fluff them out in there. And that is what I've found to be the best way to wick this device. Otherwise, it either leaks or it's dry. I mean, wicking, pointing the wicks up like this, I get it. It's supposed to act like an auto dripper. Gravity is bringing that juice down to the wicks. It's going down to the coils, getting caught in that little bit of juice well on each one of those wicks, and it's feeding the coil from there. I get it. And it works. It does. But does it work well enough that it has to be that difficult to wick? And, I mean, do other systems not work better? It's interesting. It's different, the way that it's wicked. The deck is not particularly interesting or different. It's a velocity-style deck where you've got the side screws on the bottom and the top screw actually screws down, which I prefer over most velocity-style decks, but the terminal holes are just terribly machined. It looks like a rat, a teeny tiny metal rat, just shoot out the terminal holes. The posts are all kind of just scratched up and marred. It just looks terrible in there. Guillotine style deck, I guess because you're taking the head off the wick when you're done building it. I just don't get it. I don't like it. I'm not into it, honestly. And to wick it, to find the right way to wick it, it took a little bit of trial and error, because the first time I tried to do it, I just, left the wicks coming up off the deck, and then the Delrin piece, the insert, is actually inside the tank at first. It doesn't come out right away. I really recommend pulling out that piece, that insert, to begin with, because the way that this thing works, when I didn't wick through that little insert there, that peak or clear ultim, whatever it is, that insert, what happens is it just leaks constantly. Juice just doesn't get to the wicking right. It just kind of shoots right past the wicking and just leaks right out the sides. What I find works the best is to wick through that insert. And it took me a few tries to get that right, because I didn't realize the insert could actually come out of here at first. I thought it was stuck in there, and it is stuck in there. I had to force it out with some tweezers to show you, but I really recommend you take that thing out and then put it together with that insert in mind. When you wick through it, that kind of creates that juice barrier, wick barrier a little bit better, and juice is not just rushing past it, it's actually getting caught in the wick, and it's working the way that it should that way. You really need to be careful how close you cut those wicks. If you don't cut them short enough, what happens is this turning that you're doing here, it catches the wicks, and it just kind of pulls them out, and it's just messier. It just creates a mess, and it makes it difficult to open, and you can feel it crunching on the wicks, and it's just not turning the way it should, So you gotta be mindful of that. Really, there's no reason to turn it around and around and around, but you should be able to do that when the wicks are in there. Does it work? Yes. Juice flows down those wicks and feeds the coil just fine. I don't get any dry hits or anything like that, but the result is an incredibly messy device. Whenever I want to get to the deck and see what's going on there, I've got to take it apart, and no matter how I take it apart, it always leaks. When I want to fill it, it kind of catches on this piece right here and opens everything up, and it's a mess again. And closing it and opening it while I'm filling it, whenever I rotate it, more leaking. It's just a messy way of doing things. And it's not really all that convenient, if you ask me. But a vape's great. I'll tell you that. Vape's great. So there's some things about this device that I would definitely change. It's got to be easier to wick. Got to be easier to wick. And this closing and opening of juice feed and airflow together, that's not working for me. Something needs to be changed there, and the fill mechanism needs to be fixed. That fill mechanism, the way that it's pulling off this piece right underneath it, the way that it is opening up that glass chamber a bit where the glass can come out, is creating more of a mess. I mean, just touching the side of it, my fingers are covered in juice right now. Just touching this, just like that. No matter what I do, it's always a mess. Juice just gets caught in these heat dissipation films just constantly. Icky sort of device. I'm not a fan of a lot of it, and the machining is terrible. The machining on the deck is bad. The machining on the post hole is really, really bad. This metal here, super thin metal. It's not quality metal. It's not. It's super thin. It's sharp as hell. You know, it's just, no. But to create, you know, a gravity-fed sort of auto dripper is what it is. I like that innovation. I like the idea of the juice flowing down to the wicks and the wicks actually coming up into the tank that way. I like that concept, but it needs to be delivered better. It needs to be rethought, honestly. I'd be interested in seeing what the Hellixer V2 looks like, how they work to correct a lot of these things that they've done. Yeah, I mean, I would wait for the V2, honestly, but it just needs a lot of refinement. Anyway, till next time, I'm your homeboy Josh. Vape on, Vapers.